The night of the full moon ceremony had finally arrived. The forest surrounding the Shadowfang Pack clearing stood silent, as if even the wind understood the importance of what was about to happen. Tall black pines circled the sacred ground, their branches swaying slowly beneath the pale silver light of the moon. Hundreds of wolves had gathered in the clearing, forming a wide ring around the ancient stone platform at its center. No one spoke. No one dared. The air itself felt heavy, thick with anticipation. Every pair of eyes in the pack was fixed on the same place. The platform, and the two figures standing upon it. At the center of the stone stood the Alpha of Shadowfang. Alpha Kale. Tall, powerful, unshakable. His presence alone commanded silence. His dark hair moved slightly in the cold night breeze, and his sharp eyes swept across the crowd like a blade. Warriors, elders, hunters, omegas, every wolf in the pack lowered their heads the moment his gaze passed over them. Kale was feared, respected, unchallenged. He had led the Shadowfang Pack through battles against rogue wolves and rival packs. Under his rule, the territory had grown stronger, richer, more powerful than ever before. Yet tonight was not about war. Tonight was about something older, something sacred. The mate bond. Directly in front of him, kneeling on the cold stone platform, was the woman the moon goddess had chosen for him. Arya Vale. Her hands trembled slightly as they rested against the rough surface of the stone. Her head remained bowed, long dark hair cascading forward and hiding most of her face. The pale moonlight brushed against her skin, making her look almost fragile beneath the vast sky. To most wolves in the pack, that was exactly what she was. Fragile. Quiet. Weak. Arya had grown up on the edges of pack life, working quietly among the healers and omegas. She rarely spoke unless spoken to, and when she walked through the village, many barely noticed her presence. Some believed she was simply shy. Others believed she was useless. And yet, the moon goddess had done something no one expected. She had bound Arya Vale to Alpha Kale. The mate bond between them had appeared only 3 nights ago. Since then, the pack had been buzzing with rumors. Whispers. Questions. Confusion. How could a woman like Arya possibly stand beside the most powerful alpha in the Northern Territories? Many had expected Kale to deny it. Many had believed the bond would never reach this moment. But here they were. The sacred ceremony. The full moon shining directly above the clearing. The entire pack gathered to witness the alpha claim his mate. A cold wind passed through the trees. The torches surrounding the clearing flickered wildly. Arya slowly lifted her eyes. For a brief moment, she looked up at Kale. Hope trembled quietly inside her chest. For years, she had admired him from a distance. The strong alpha who protected the pack, the leader who commanded warriors with a single word. She had never imagined fate would tie their lives together. But the moon goddess had spoken. And tonight was supposed to be the beginning of something new. The beginning of their bond. The beginning of her life as Luna. The elder of the pack stepped forward slowly, leaning on a carved wooden staff decorated with ancient runes. His voice carried across the clearing, steady and ceremonial. The moon goddess has revealed her will. The alpha and his chosen mate now stand before us beneath the sacred moon. The crowd remained silent. Arya's heart pounded harder with every passing second. The elder continued. Alpha Kale of the Shadowfang Pack, do you accept the mate bond gifted to you by the moon goddess? A long silence followed. The wind seemed to pause. Even the forest itself waited. Kale looked down at the woman kneeling before him. His expression held no warmth, no affection, only cold calculation. Something sharp flashed through his eyes. Disappointment. Disgust. Arya noticed it. The small flicker of emotion struck her like a knife. Her fingers tightened slightly against the stone platform. Still she waited. Still she hoped. Perhaps he only needed time. Perhaps he only needed to accept what fate had chosen. The elder turned toward Kale again. All that remains is for you to claim your mate before the pack. A faint murmur rippled through the crowd. Some wolves leaned closer. Some whispered quietly. Everyone expected the same thing. The alpha would pull Arya to her feet. He would bite her shoulder. The mate bond would seal forever. Arya would rise as Luna of the Shadowfang pack. Instead, Kale stepped back. Just one step. But it changed everything. Confusion spread across the faces of the gathered wolves. Arya blinked slowly. Her breath caught in her throat. Kale's voice cut through the night like steel. Cold. Clear. Merciless. I will not accept this bond. The words struck the clearing like thunder. Gasps erupted from the crowd. Several wolves exchanged shocked looks. Even the elder froze where he stood. Arya felt the ground beneath her knees grow colder. Her heart skipped painfully. Kale's gaze hardened as he looked directly at her. I, Alpha Kale of the Shadowfang pack. He paused for only a moment. Then he spoke the words that shattered the sacred silence of the full moon ceremony. I reject you as my mate. The world seemed to stop. A violent wave of pain exploded through Arya's chest. The mate bond snapped like a broken chain. She gasped. Her body collapsed forward, as if the air had been ripped from her lungs. The rejection burned through her veins, spreading like fire beneath her skin. Around the clearing, whispers erupted into open voices. Shock. Disbelief. And then, laughter. Some wolves shook their heads in mock pity. Others whispered cruel remarks. Of course, the alpha rejected her. What did she expect? An omega like her could never stand beside the alpha. Arya's vision blurred. Her hands shook violently as she struggled to breathe. The pain of rejection was something every wolf feared. It tore through the soul. It destroyed the bond the moon goddess herself had created. And yet the alpha had done it without hesitation, without mercy, without even looking back. But just as Arya's body collapsed completely against the stone platform, something changed. A strange tremor passed through the ground beneath the clearing. At first it was subtle, a faint vibration. Then it grew stronger. The torches flickered wildly again. Leaves rustled through the surrounding trees. A cold wind swept across the clearing with sudden force. Several wolves frowned in confusion. Kale himself stiffened slightly. His sharp instincts recognized something unnatural, something powerful. Arya lay motionless on the stone platform. Her breathing had slowed. Too slow. For a moment, the entire clearing seemed to hold its breath. Then, her eyes opened. Not the soft brown eyes the pack had always known. These eyes shone with an eerie silver light. The glow was faint at first, then brighter, brighter, until the moonlight itself seemed to gather around her gaze. Several wolves stepped back instinctively. A low rumble rolled across the clearing. Not thunder. Something deeper. Something ancient. Kale's wolf stirred violently inside his mind. A warning. A feeling he had never experienced before. Danger. Power. Something far greater than any alpha. The ground trembled again beneath their feet. Arya slowly lifted her head. The silver glow in her eyes pulsed once beneath the moonlight. And somewhere deep in the silence of the forest, a voice older than the pack itself seemed to whisper across the wind. The moon goddess had not made a mistake. The alpha had. Because the woman he had just rejected in front of the entire pack was not weak, was not ordinary, and she was certainly not meant to kneel. She was the true Luna, chosen long before the alpha ever spoke those cruel words beneath the full moon. And the moment the bond shattered, something far more powerful had awakened. The Shadowfang pack had always lived by one unbreakable law. Strength ruled everything. From the moment a wolf was old enough to stand on 2 feet, the pack began measuring their worth. Strength in battle, strength in leadership, strength in loyalty. Every wolf knew their place, and every place was built upon power. At the very top stood the alpha, the one wolf whose command could silence an entire territory with a single word. The alpha was the protector of the land, the judge of disputes, and the heart of the pack itself. Beneath him stood the beta, his most trusted second, the wolf who carried out his orders and commanded the warriors when the alpha could not. Then came the warriors, the strongest fighters in the pack, the wolves who patrolled the borders, hunted the rogues, and defended the territory from rival packs who might dare to challenge Shadowfang's dominance. And at the very bottom, the Omegas, the quiet workers, the unseen hands who kept the pack running in ways few ever noticed. They cooked, cleaned, healed the injured, tended the sick. They were rarely praised and often ignored. It was not a cruel system. It was simply the way things had always been. And among the Omegas of Shadowfang, there was one name almost everyone knew. Not because she was powerful, not because she was important, but because she was easy to overlook. Arya Vale, a quiet girl who rarely drew attention to herself. She moved softly through the pack village, often carrying baskets of herbs or bowls of healing mixtures prepared for injured warriors. Most wolves barely noticed her passing by. Some greeted her kindly. Others simply stepped around her without a second thought. Arya had grown up within the pack walls, but her story had always been surrounded by silence. She had arrived as a child. No one knew exactly how. No one knew where she had come from. Years ago, hunters returning from the far edges of the territory had discovered a small girl wandering alone in the forest. She had been weak, exhausted, barely old enough to speak clearly. When they brought her back to the pack village, the elders searched for signs of another pack's scent. They found none. No mark. No clan. No family. The elders decided the only reasonable explanation was that she had been abandoned or lost during some long-forgotten conflict between distant packs. So the Shadowfang pack did what strong packs often did. They took her in. She was given a name. Arya Vale. A place among the Omegas. A simple life within the safety of the territory. And as the years passed, Arya grew into a quiet young woman whose presence blended easily into the background of pack life. She spent most of her days inside the healer's hut, learning from the elderly woman who oversaw the pack's medicines. Arya had a natural talent for herbs and healing mixtures. Her hands were gentle, her voice soft, and injured warriors often found themselves calming down when she treated their wounds. But despite her skill, very few wolves looked at her with admiration. Because strength was what truly mattered in a pack like Shadowfang. And Arya had never shown much of it. Her wolf had awakened late compared to others her age. When it finally did, it appeared smaller than most wolves in the pack. Some said it was weak. Some said it barely existed at all. Those whispers followed her for years. Quiet judgments spoken when she passed by. A few wolves pitied her. Others ignored her completely. But none of them truly knew the thoughts she carried in her heart. Because hidden behind her quiet life, there was a secret she had never spoken aloud. Arya had loved someone for a very long time. Someone she knew she could never reach. The alpha of the Shadowfang pack. Kale. Even his name carried weight when spoken. Kale had not always been alpha. Years ago, before Arya had fully grown into adulthood, the pack had been led by a different leader, an older alpha who ruled wisely but whose time eventually came to an end. When the leadership challenge arrived, Kale had stepped forward to claim the position. Many wolves had tried to stand against him. None had succeeded. Kale fought like a storm unleashed upon the battlefield. His strength, speed, and raw power overwhelmed every opponent who dared to challenge him. One by one, the contenders fell. When the final challenge ended, Kale stood alone beneath the rising moon, victorious. That night, he became the alpha of Shadowfang. And from that moment forward, the pack changed. Under Kale's command, the warriors grew stronger. Patrols expanded across the territory. Rogue attacks became rare because none dared to challenge a pack led by a wolf as fierce as Kale. He was respected, feared, unquestioned. Tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair and piercing eyes that seemed capable of seeing straight through anyone who stood before him, Kale carried the kind of presence that demanded obedience. Few wolves ever spoke casually around him. Most bowed their heads the moment he entered a room. But there was something else about Kale that many wolves noticed. Something colder beneath his strength. He was not a warm leader. He did not smile easily. He rarely allowed emotions to show in his expression. Where other alphas might celebrate victories with their pack or laugh among their warriors, Kale remained distant, focused, controlled. To him, leadership was duty. Not comfort. Not affection. And because of that, many wolves found him difficult to approach. Except for one person. Lydia, the daughter of the pack's beta. Where Arya was quiet and unnoticed, Lydia was impossible to ignore. She was confident, beautiful, sharp-tongued when she wished to be. Raised in a family of power, Lydia had grown up surrounded by the pack's strongest wolves. Her father commanded the warriors beneath the alpha, and her presence within the pack carried an influence that few others possessed. Many believed Lydia would one day become Luna. It seemed natural. The alpha and the beta's daughter. A powerful union that would strengthen the pack's leadership even further. And over time, rumors began to spread. Rumors that Kale favored Lydia's company. Rumors that the two of them shared quiet conversations beneath the training grounds after sunset. Rumors that Lydia would soon stand beside the alpha as his chosen mate. Arya had heard those whispers like everyone else. Each time they reached her ears, something inside her chest tightened painfully. But she never allowed the sadness to show. She simply lowered her head and continued her work in the healer's hut. Because wolves like her did not dream about standing beside the alpha. They simply accepted their place. Until 3 nights ago. The moment everything changed. The moment the moon goddess revealed something no one in the Shadowfang pack had ever expected. The mate bond. It appeared suddenly, without warning, without explanation. And when the bond revealed itself, it did not connect Kale to Lydia. It connected him to Arya Vale, the quiet Omega healer who had spent her entire life standing in the background. The moment the truth spread across the pack, disbelief followed quickly behind it. Some wolves refused to believe it. Others whispered that the moon goddess must have made some strange error. Even the warriors seemed unsettled by the news. But the bond itself was undeniable. Every wolf understood the sacred nature of the mate bond. It was not something that could be ignored easily. Not even by an alpha. And so the elders had declared what tradition demanded. The full moon ceremony would be held. The alpha would stand before the pack. His chosen mate would kneel beside him. And beneath the sacred light of the moon, the bond would be sealed forever. Arya had spent the past 3 days in a whirlwind of emotions she barely understood. Hope, fear, confusion. For years, she had loved the alpha silently, never imagining such a thing could ever happen. Now fate itself had placed her at the center of the pack's most sacred ritual. Part of her believed everything might truly change. That perhaps Kale would accept the bond. That perhaps he would look at her, not as an Omega, not as a weak wolf, but as the woman chosen to stand beside him. But another part of her heart trembled with doubt. Because even as the ceremony approached, Kale had never once come to see her. Not once. And Lydia's cold stare across the pack grounds had grown sharper with every passing day. The entire Shadowfang pack had gathered tonight to witness what would happen beneath the full moon. Some expected celebration, some expected conflict. But no one, not even the elders, could truly predict what the Alpha would decide when the moment arrived. And now, as the sacred ceremony unfolded beneath the silver sky, the decision had been made. The Alpha had spoken. The mate bond had been shattered. And somewhere deep, beneath the pain tearing through Arya's chest, something ancient had begun to stir. The moon had reached its highest point in the sky when the ceremony truly began. Silver light poured over the Shadowfang clearing like a quiet flood, washing over the ancient stone platform and the hundreds of wolves gathered around it. Torches burned along the edges of the clearing, their flames dancing restlessly as the wind threaded through the dark trees. The entire pack had come to witness the moment. Warriors stood in disciplined rows near the front of the circle, their broad shoulders forming a wall of silent strength. Hunters and scouts gathered behind them. Families stood farther back, whispering quietly among themselves as they waited. Every pair of eyes remained fixed on the stone platform beneath the full moon, because that was where the Alpha stood. And kneeling before him was the woman the moon goddess had chosen. Arya Vale. The tension in the clearing was almost unbearable. Even wolves who had lived long enough to witness many mating ceremonies could feel something different in the air tonight. A strange unease had settled over the gathering, as though the forest itself understood that this moment would not unfold the way tradition intended. At the edge of the platform, the pack elder raised his carved staff slowly into the air. The murmurs across the clearing faded. Silence spread once again. His voice carried across the night. Tonight we stand beneath the sacred moon to witness the bond chosen by the moon goddess. The words echoed gently between the trees. Alpha Kale of the Shadowfang pack stands before his destined mate. By the will of the goddess, their bond has been revealed. Tonight that bond may be sealed before the pack. The elder lowered his staff slightly and turned toward the Alpha. Kale did not move. His broad shoulders remained stiff beneath the moonlight, his gaze locked downward at the woman kneeling before him. Arya's head remained bowed. Her heart pounded loudly enough that she could barely hear the elder's voice anymore. The moment felt unreal, as though she were standing inside a dream she had never dared to imagine. Inside her mind, her wolf stirred restlessly. A young wolf, smaller than most, yet filled with excitement that rippled through Arya's chest like sparks of light. Mate. The word echoed softly inside her thoughts. Her wolf recognized the bond instantly. The connection pulling them toward Kale felt warm and powerful, a magnetic thread tying their souls together beneath the moon. Her wolf wanted to stand. I wanted to step closer. I wanted to reach him. But Arya remained still, kneeling exactly as tradition required. She did not dare raise her eyes again. Not yet. Because something about Kale's presence felt wrong. The bond called to her. But the Alpha did not answer. Instead, something colder radiated from him. Something distant. Something sharp. At the far edge of the gathered wolves, quiet whispers began to circulate again. She's really the mate. That healer girl. This must be some mistake. The murmurs passed through the crowd like drifting smoke. Some wolves shook their heads. Others watched with open curiosity. And a few laughed quietly among themselves. The idea that Arya Vale, the quiet Omega healer who spent her days grinding herbs and stitching wounds, might rise to become Luna of the Shadowfang pack seemed almost unbelievable. Many had expected Kale's mate to be someone stronger. Someone born into power. Someone like Lydia. Standing near the front of the circle, Lydia crossed her arms slowly as she watched the ceremony unfold. The torchlight illuminated her sharp smile. Her eyes remained fixed on Arya with a look that carried no kindness. Only amusement. As though she were watching a foolish play unfold before her. The elder raised his voice again. Alpha Kale, step forward and claim your mate. The words seemed to freeze the air. All eyes turned toward the Alpha. The mate bond pulsed softly between him and Arya. Inside her chest, Arya felt it clearly now. The connection tugged gently, urging them toward each other. Her wolf grew more excited with every passing second, her instincts urging her to stand, to move closer, to complete the sacred bond. But Kale remained motionless. His expression had hardened. His eyes burned with something darker than hesitation. Anger. The bond tugged at him again. His wolf stirred violently within his mind, recognizing the connection, recognizing the woman before him as their destined mate. But Kale's jaw tightened, because in his mind, the truth felt unacceptable. His Luna, the woman meant to stand beside him, to lead the pack with strength and authority, was supposed to be powerful, fearless, respected by every wolf in Shadowfang territory. A Luna was not meant to be weak, not meant to be fragile, not meant to be someone the warriors would struggle to take seriously. And yet the moon goddess had placed that title upon the shoulders of a quiet healer who barely spoke above a whisper. Kale's gaze dropped toward Arya again. Still kneeling, still silent. Her hands trembled slightly against the cold stone. She looked small, too small. Inside the gathered wolves, the whispers grew louder. She's shaking. She can't even stand straight. How could she lead the pack? The words drifted across the clearing like tiny blades. Arya heard them. Everyone. But she remained where she was. Because the bond still called to her. And somewhere deep inside her heart, hope still lived. Perhaps Kale only needed time. Perhaps once he looked at her properly, once he felt the bond more clearly, something would change. The elder spoke again. Alpha Kale, claim your mate before the pack. The moment had arrived. The ritual demanded action. The Alpha would step forward. He would lift his mate to her feet. He would bite her shoulder, sealing the sacred bond beneath the moon. Arya finally gathered the courage to raise her eyes. Her gaze met Kale's. For a brief moment, their eyes locked. And in that moment, Arya saw the truth. There was no warmth in his gaze. No acceptance. Only cold disappointment. The mate bond pulsed again between them. Her wolf pushed forward eagerly. But Kale stepped back. A single step. Small, yet powerful enough to send a ripple of confusion through the entire gathering. The elder frowned slightly. A few warriors exchanged uncertain glances. Arya's heart stopped. Because the bond did not feel stronger. It felt strained. Kale's voice broke the silence like a blade, slicing through cloth. I will not accept this. Gasps erupted around the clearing. Several wolves leaned forward in shock. The elder blinked slowly, as if trying to understand whether he had heard correctly. But Kale continued. His voice remained steady. Cold. Unyielding. The moon goddess may have revealed a bond, but that does not mean I must accept it. The whispers across the pack exploded. Some wolves stared at the Alpha in disbelief. Others turned toward Arya with open pity. Lydia's smile widened slightly. Arya's chest tightened painfully. Her fingers curled against the stone beneath her. She felt the bond tremble again. Fragile now. Weakening. Kale's gaze hardened further as he looked directly down at her. Aluna must be strong. His voice carried across the clearing, every word striking the air with ruthless clarity. Luna must command respect. She must be someone the pack can stand behind in battle and in leadership. The torches flickered violently as the wind swept through the clearing again. Kale's next words fell like stones. A weak Omega cannot stand beside an Alpha. Silence followed. Heavy, crushing, and then, the words that shattered everything. I reject you. Pain exploded through Arya's body. A cry escaped her lips before she could stop it. The mate bond snapped violently, tearing through her chest like a blade. Her wolf howled in agony inside her mind. Arya collapsed forward onto the stone platform, her body shaking uncontrollably as the rejection burned through her veins. The sacred bond the moon goddess had created was breaking apart, destroying itself, destroying her. Around the clearing, the silence lasted only a heartbeat. Then laughter began to rise. Some wolves shook their heads in disbelief. Others whispered cruel jokes behind their hands. Did she really think she would become Luna? A healer girl beside the alpha. She should have known better. Lydia covered her mouth lightly, though the amusement in her eyes could not be hidden. Arya barely heard any of it. The pain overwhelmed everything. Her breathing grew shallow. Her vision blurred. Her wolf cried out again before falling silent. The bond was gone, destroyed before the entire pack. And yet, as Arya's body collapsed against the cold stone, something strange began to happen. At first, it was only a faint vibration beneath the platform, a small tremor running through the earth. Then the torches flickered wildly. The wind grew colder. Leaves rustled violently among the surrounding trees. Several wolves fell silent again, because the ground beneath their feet was beginning to shake. Kale stiffened. His wolf stirred uneasily. Something powerful had just awakened. The moment the bond shattered, the world did not return to normal. Something else answered instead. Arya's body had barely struck the cold stone platform when the first change swept through the clearing. At first, it was subtle enough that many wolves did not immediately notice it. A faint tremor, a quiet vibration beneath the earth. The torches flickered violently along the edges of the sacred ground, their flames bending sideways as though an unseen force had suddenly rushed through the clearing. The wind rose. Not the gentle wind that moved through the forest earlier that night. This wind came with weight. It curled through the tall pines, sweeping across the clearing in slow, powerful waves. Leaves lifted from the ground and spiraled upward into the air. Several wolves turned their heads in confusion. This was not part of the ceremony. This was not natural. And yet the strange movement of the air was only the beginning. Above them, the full moon seemed to change. It had always been bright. Full moons often were. But now the light pouring down from the sky began to intensify, growing sharper and clearer until the entire clearing looked as though it had been dipped in silver. The shadows of the wolves stretched longer across the ground. The ancient stone platform gleamed beneath the growing glow. And the wolves began to react. A low whimper slipped from somewhere in the crowd. Then another. And another. Warriors who had faced rogue attacks without fear suddenly shifted uneasily where they stood. Their wolves stirred within their minds, restless and uneasy. Several instinctively lowered their heads. Others stepped backward, without fully understanding why. The sound of quiet whining began spreading across the clearing, like ripples across water. Something about the moonlight felt wrong. Too powerful. Too heavy. Even the forest surrounding Shadowfang territory seemed to respond. Birds hidden among the branches burst suddenly into the sky, fleeing deeper into the night. The animals that normally rustled through the undergrowth had gone silent. The entire forest felt as though it were holding its breath. At the center of the clearing, Arya remained collapsed against the stone. Her breathing had slowed to a shallow rhythm. Her body trembled faintly from the pain of rejection. The bond was gone. Broken. Destroyed in front of the entire pack. But deep within the silence of her mind, something stirred. At first it was faint. A distant pulse, like a heartbeat echoing from somewhere far away. Her wolf stirred weakly, still wounded from the violent tearing of the mate bond. Pain clouded everything. Yet the strange pulse continued. Slow. Ancient. Powerful. Outside her body, The wind rose again, sweeping across the clearing in a wide circle that caused several wolves to stagger slightly. Alpha Kale felt it immediately. His head snapped upward as the sensation struck him. It felt like a wave crashing against his instincts. His wolf surged violently inside his mind, pushing forward with sudden urgency. Danger. The word echoed through Kale's thoughts with a sharp intensity he had never experienced before. Not the danger of battle. Not the danger of rogue wolves or rival packs. This feeling was older. Deeper. Something that made even an alpha's wolf hesitate. Kale's eyes narrowed as he stared down at the woman lying motionless on the platform. Something about the air around her had changed. The wind did not simply pass through the clearing anymore. It moved toward her. The moonlight seemed to gather around her body like flowing water. Several warriors stepped back instinctively. The pack elder gripped his staff tighter, his wrinkled face tightening with confusion. No one spoke. No one dared. Because something was happening that none of them understood. Inside Arya's mind, the darkness surrounding her consciousness shifted slowly. The pain of the rejection still lingered like burning fire beneath her skin. Her wolf whimpered softly, curling inward as the broken bond continued to echo through her body. But then, a new presence entered the silence. It was not her wolf. Her wolf was young. Small. This presence felt older than anything she had ever sensed before. It carried weight. Authority. A quiet power that filled the empty spaces of her thoughts. Arya's fatting awareness stirred slightly. The presence moved closer. And then a voice spoke. Not with sound. Not through the air. But directly inside her mind. Child of the moon. The voice carried a calm strength that seemed to echo endlessly through the darkness. Arya's fatting thoughts struggled to respond. She could not see who was speaking. She could not understand where the voice came from. Yet it felt familiar in a strange, powerful way. As though it had always existed somewhere far beyond her reach. The voice spoke again. Slower this time. Clearer. It is time. Outside, the ground trembled once more. Several wolves stumbled as the vibration rolled beneath their feet. A low rumble echoed from deep beneath the earth, like the distant growl of thunder buried beneath the forest floor. The moonlight intensified further, pouring down in thick silver beams that illuminated the platform like a sacred altar. Arya's fingers twitched faintly against the stone. The wind circled her again. And then, her eyes opened. The brown color the pack had always known was gone. In its place burned a cold silver glow. Not the dull reflection of moonlight. This glow came from within her. The moment the light appeared, several wolves gasped aloud. One warrior dropped to a knee without realizing it. Another covered his mouth in shock. Even Kale felt his breath catch in his throat. Because the power radiating from Arya in that moment felt nothing like the quiet healer the pack had known for years. It felt ancient, heavy, commanding. His wolf recoiled instinctively. Not in fear alone, but in recognition. The silver light in Arya's eyes pulsed once. A soft wave of energy rolled outward across the clearing, brushing against every wolf standing there. The reaction was immediate. More wolves whimpered quietly. Some lowered their heads instinctively. Others backed away from the platform entirely. Kale remained where he stood, but his muscles tightened as his instincts screamed warnings inside his mind. He had fought many battles. He had faced rogues, rival alphas, and dangerous creatures that roamed the far wilderness. But he had never felt anything like this. Not from another wolf. Not from anyone. The silver glow in Arya's eyes flickered again. Then, without warning, the light vanished. Her eyelids closed. Her body went completely still. The wind died down. The trembling earth fell silent. The moon returned to its normal pale glow above the clearing. And just like that, the strange moment ended. Arya lay unconscious against the stone platform, her breathing slow and shallow. The wolves of Shadowfang stared at her in stunned silence. No one spoke. No one understood what they had just witnessed. And yet every wolf standing in that clearing felt the same uneasy truth settling quietly in their chest. Something had awakened. Something far older than the pack itself. Kale's gaze remained fixed on Arya's motionless form. His mind searched desperately for an explanation. But none came. Because whatever had just revealed itself beneath the moon was beyond anything he had ever known. The first thing Arya felt when consciousness returned was pain. Not the sharp pain of a wound. Not the dull ache of tired muscles. This pain burned from deep inside her chest, spreading slowly through her ribs like fire crawling beneath her skin. Her breath caught as her eyes slowly opened. Above her, a low wooden ceiling came into focus. Small bundles of dried herbs hung from thin cords, swaying gently in the faint breeze slipping through a nearby window. The soft scent of lavender and crushed mint filled the air. For a few quiet seconds, Arya simply lay there, trying to understand where she was. Then memory returned. The full moon ceremony. The entire pack watching. Kale standing above her. His cold voice cutting through the sacred clearing. I reject you. The words echoed through her mind, like a cruel whisper that refused to fade. Her chest tightened instantly. Her hand moved weakly to the center of her sternum. Beneath her fingers, the skin there felt hot, almost burning. Arya slowly pushed herself up against the thin bedding beneath her. The healer's hut. Of course. That was where she had been brought. She sat in silence for a moment, breathing slowly as the memories continued to settle into place. The rejection. The laughter. The cold faces of the pack, watching her collapse in front of them. Her wolf stirred faintly inside her mind, still wounded from the violent break of the mate bond. The connection that had once pulsed warmly in her chest was gone now. Empty. A hollow space where something sacred had once lived. Arya lowered her gaze toward her chest. Her fingers gently pulled aside the fabric of the simple tunic someone had dressed her in while she was unconscious. And there it was. The rejection scar. A dark red mark spread across the center of her chest, shaped almost like fractured lines branching outward from one central point. The mark looked raw and angry, the skin around it still swollen from the violent tearing of the mate bond. She swallowed slowly. Every rejected wolf carried such a scar. It was a mark that never truly disappeared. A reminder of the moment fate had been denied. Outside the hut, voices drifted through the thin wooden walls. At first they sounded distant, then clearer. Arya froze as she recognized the tone. Pack members. They were gathered outside. Talking. Did you see her face when the alpha rejected her? A burst of laughter followed. Another voice spoke. I told you the bond had to be wrong. The moon goddess wouldn't give the alpha a mate like that. Maybe she tricked him somehow. Wouldn't surprise me. The laughter came again. Arya's fingers tightened around the fabric of her tunic. She remained perfectly still, listening despite the tight knot forming in her chest. Another voice joined the conversation. I heard she's been watching the alpha for years. Well, of course she has. Every Omega girl dreams about that. Yes, but this one actually tried to trap him. The whispers continued. She probably thought if the bond appeared, he'd have no choice but to accept her. What a foolish plan. Imagine thinking someone like her could become Luna. A quiet voice spoke next, carrying a tone of mock sympathy. She should be grateful he rejected her before the ceremony went any further. More laughter. Arya lowered her eyes slowly. The words struck deeper than the rejection itself. Because this time, there was no sacred ritual to blame. No broken bond clouding her mind. just the pack she had lived beside for years, revealing exactly what they thought of her. The voices outside shifted again. And then a new voice entered the conversation. Sharper, more confident. Lydia. I warned Cale about her. The surrounding wolves fell silent immediately. When the beta's daughter spoke, most wolves listened carefully. Lydia's voice carried easily through the hut walls. I told him she had been acting strange since the bond appeared. One of the others asked carefully, strange how? Lydia let out a small laugh. Oh, always finding excuses to be near him, always watching from a distance. A few wolves murmured in agreement. I wouldn't be surprised if she planned the whole thing. Planned it, someone asked. Yes. Lydia's voice dropped slightly, becoming softer, more dangerous. Who knows what kind of tricks she used? Maybe herbs, maybe some strange ritual. The suggestion lingered in the air. A wolf nearby scoffed quietly. You think she tried to force the mate bond? Lydia shrugged lightly. It wouldn't be the first time someone tried something like that. The seed of doubt spread quickly among the gathered wolves. Murmurs followed. Now that you mention it, she did spend a lot of time around the healer's herbs. You think she poisoned the alpha somehow? Or manipulated the bond? The laughter returned again. Inside the hut, Arya closed her eyes slowly. The humiliation settled deeper into her chest. It was not enough that she had been rejected before the entire pack. Now they were turning her into something worse. A liar. A manipulator. Someone who had tried to trap their alpha. And the worst part was, the alpha himself had not come to deny any of it. Arya had been lying here for hours. Maybe longer. Yet Cale had not stepped through the door once. Not to check on her condition. Not to silence the rumors. Not even to confirm she was still alive. The silence from him spoke louder than any insult outside the hut. He wanted nothing to do with her. Outside, Lydia's voice rose again. Well, whatever she tried, it clearly failed. A few wolves chuckled. The alpha was right to reject her. He deserves a real Luna. Yes. Lydia's voice carried a quiet satisfaction. Someone worthy of standing beside him. The group slowly began to disperse, their voices fading into the distance as they returned to the main pack grounds. The hut fell silent again. Only the soft rustling of herbs and the distant sound of the forest remained. Arya sat motionless on the bed, staring down at the dark rejection scar across her chest. Then the door creaked open. The pack healer stepped inside. Old Mara had served the Shadowfang pack longer than most wolves could remember. Her silver hair was tied into a loose braid that rested over one shoulder, and her tired eyes carried the quiet wisdom of someone who had spent decades tending to wounds both physical and emotional. She paused when she saw Arya awake. Well, Mara said softly, closing the door behind her, it seems you've decided to return to us. Arya gave a faint nod. Mara moved closer to the bed and placed a small wooden tray on the nearby table. Several bowls of crushed herbs sat upon it, their scents filling the room. Drink this, Mara said, handing her a small cup filled with warm liquid. It will help with the pain. Arya accepted the cup quietly. The herbal mixture tasted bitter as it slid down her throat. Mara watched her carefully. Then the old healer's eyes drifted toward Arya's chest. The rejection scar was still visible beneath the slightly open collar of her tunic. Mara frowned slightly. That should still be bleeding. Arya blinked. What? Mara stepped closer. Most rejection wounds take days to close. She gently pulled aside the fabric to examine the mark. Her frown deepened. Because the wound was already healing. The angry red edges were fading. The swelling had begun to shrink. Mara reached forward and placed 2 fingers lightly against Arya's wrist. She felt for the pulse. Then her brows knit together. She leaned closer. listened more carefully. Once, twice, her expression shifted. Slowly, carefully, Mara pressed her hand lightly against Arya's chest. And then she heard it clearly. 2 heartbeats, not out of rhythm, not separated, but layered, as if 2 wolves lived within the same body, beating together beneath the same skin. The old healer pulled her hand back slowly. Her eyes remained fixed on Arya. Confusion mixed with something far more unsettling. Because, in all her years of tending to the pack, she had never heard anything like it. Something was wrong. The old healer could feel it long before she fully understood it. Inside the quiet hut, the air had grown strangely heavy, as though the forest itself had crept closer to the wooden walls to listen. The flickering lantern on the table cast soft golden light across the room, but the shadows seemed darker than usual, stretching longer along the floor. Arya sat on the edge of the narrow bed, still trying to steady her breathing. Across from her, Mara remained unusually still. Her hand hovered near Arya's chest, where moments earlier she had felt something impossible. 2 heartbeats. Not fast. Not uneven. But layered together in a way no wolf's body should allow. Mara slowly withdrew her hand. Her eyes narrowed slightly as she studied the young woman in front of her. For years, Arya had been one of the quietest souls in the Shadowfang pack. Gentle, soft-spoken, hardly the kind of wolf anyone believed capable of carrying great power. Yet the strange rhythm beneath her ribs had not been imagination. Mara had lived long enough to trust her instincts. And right now, those instincts were whispering a warning she could not ignore. Outside the hut, the forest wind rustled softly through the leaves. The full moon still hung high above the trees. Its silver light slipped through the open window beside the bed, spreading across the wooden floor like liquid glass. Arya exhaled slowly, her fingers resting near the rejection scar that still burned faintly on her chest. The pain had dulled slightly, but the memory remained sharp. The alpha's voice. The laughter of the pack. The crushing moment when the bond shattered before everyone. She closed her eyes briefly. But as she shifted her shoulders, something caught her attention. A strange warmth brushed along the back of her left shoulder. At first, she thought it might simply be soreness from the earlier fall during the ceremony. But the sensation grew stronger. Warmer. Almost tingling. Arya frowned slightly and lifted her hand toward the back of her shoulder. Her fingers brushed against the fabric of her tunic. Then she paused. Because beneath the cloth, something was glowing. Faint, but unmistakable. A soft silver light bled through the thin fabric. Mara noticed it at the same moment. The old healer leaned forward sharply. What is that? Arya blinked in confusion. What? The light. Mara stepped closer, her eyes fixed on Arya's shoulder. Arya twisted slightly, trying to look behind herself, but the angle made it difficult. The glow brightened. Silver light spread slowly across the cloth like moonlight pouring through water. Mara's breath caught. Hold still. Her voice had changed. Not frightened, but serious. Careful. She reached forward and gently pulled the collar of Arya's tunic aside. The moment the fabric shifted, the silver glow intensified. And the mark revealed itself. Both women fell silent. Etched into the skin of Arya's shoulder was a symbol. Not a scar. Not a wound. A perfect marking that seemed to exist beneath the skin itself. It curved in delicate lines that formed a circular pattern. Almost like a crescent moon, wrapped around a smaller symbol at its center. Silver light pulsed softly through the shape. It was beautiful. But more than that, it felt powerful. Ancient. The light reflected across the healer's wrinkled face. For a long moment, Mara simply stared. Her mind raced through memories she had not visited in many years. stories told beside winter fires, legends whispered by elders who had lived long before her, tales of something rare, something sacred. Her voice dropped to a whisper. No. Arya looked over her shoulder anxiously. What is it? Mara did not answer immediately. Her fingers trembled slightly as she traced the air just above the glowing symbol, careful not to touch it. The mark pulsed again, beneath the moonlight pouring through the window. Her voice finally returned. I have only seen drawings of this. Arya's confusion deepened. Drawings of what? Mara's eyes lifted slowly to meet hers. The Luna mark. The words seemed to hang in the quiet room like a spell. Arya blinked. The Luna mark. Mara nodded slowly. It appears only in the oldest records of the packs. Her voice carried the weight of something ancient, a sign placed by the moon goddess herself. Arya stared at her. That doesn't make any sense. Mara's gaze returned to the glowing symbol. It appears when the goddess chooses someone directly. Arya's heart skipped. Chooses someone. The healer swallowed slowly. There have been stories, very old ones, about wolves who carried a mark like this. Her voice dropped even lower. They were not ordinary lunas. Arya felt a strange chill pass down her spine. What were they? Mara opened her mouth to answer. But before a single word could leave her lips, the hut door slammed open. The sudden crash shattered the quiet like breaking glass. Both women turned sharply. Lydia stood in the doorway. Her expression was cold. Behind her, 2 pack guards stepped into the room. Their armor clinked softly as they moved forward. Lydia's eyes swept across the hut until they landed on Arya. Her lips curled into a thin smile. Well, she said slowly. So this is where you've been hiding. Mara straightened immediately. You cannot barge in here like this. Lydia ignored her. She walked deeper into the hut, her sharp gaze examining Arya carefully. You caused quite a scene tonight. Arya's fingers curled slightly against the bed. I didn't do anything. Lydia laughed softly. That's not what everyone else thinks. She turned toward the guards briefly. Several witnesses say she behaved strangely before the ceremony. Arya's heart sank. Lydia stepped closer, whispering to herself, looking at the alpha in ways that seemed deliberate. Her voice dripped with accusation. Some believe she tried to manipulate the bond. That's a lie, Mara snapped. But Lydia raised one hand calmly. Whether it's true or not, the alpha has already made his decision. Her eyes hardened. She is no longer his concern. She turned to the guards. Take her. Arya stared in shock. What? The guards stepped forward. You can't just. One of them grabbed her arm firmly. She will answer to the pack council, Lydia continued smoothly. And until then, she will perform duties appropriate for someone of her status. The second guard pulled Arya to her feet. Her shoulder twisted as she struggled slightly. The glowing mark burned faintly beneath her skin. Mara stepped forward angrily. She's injured. Lydia turned her head slightly. And yet she seems perfectly capable of standing. Her cold eyes returned to Arya. If she has enough strength to deceive the alpha, she certainly has enough strength to work. The guards dragged Arya toward the door. Her bare feet scraped against the wooden floor. Outside, the night air struck her skin as they pulled her into the pack grounds. Several wolves nearby looked up immediately. Whispers spread again. She's being punished. I knew something was wrong with her. The guards stopped near the central work area of the village. One of them shoved a large bucket into her hands. Water duty. The other pointed toward a stack of heavy supply crates nearby. And after that, the kitchens. Arya swallowed slowly. These were the lowest tasks given to Omegas. The work that lasted from dawn until long after nightfall. The kind of work meant to break someone down. She lowered her head quietly. Understood. But as she turned toward the water well, something strange stirred inside her again. A slow warmth spread beneath her skin. The mark on her shoulder pulsed faintly beneath her clothing. And deep inside her chest, that second heartbeat grew stronger. The night should have brought peace. For most wolves in the Shadowfang pack, the full moon ceremony had already become a memory whispered beside fires and through quiet conversations. The excitement had faded. The shock of the public rejection had slowly turned into gossip, and the pack had returned to its ordinary routines. But for one wolf in the territory, the night refused to end. Alpha Kale stood alone at the edge of the training grounds, staring toward the dark forest that surrounded the pack village. The torches along the perimeter had burned low, their flames flickering weakly against the cold air. Most of the warriors had already returned to their dens. Even the patrol wolves had begun their quiet rounds along the territory borders. Everything was calm. Everything was exactly as it should have been. And yet Kale could not shake the feeling clawing at the back of his mind. Something was wrong. His jaw tightened as he exhaled slowly. The night breeze moved through his dark hair, carrying with it the familiar sense of pine trees, damp earth, and distant streams flowing through the forest. Normally, those scents grounded him. They reminded him that the pack territory was secure. But tonight, those familiar smells did nothing to quiet the unrest inside him. Because something inside his chest refused to settle. At first, he had tried to ignore it. When the ceremony ended and the crowd dispersed, Kale had walked away from the clearing without looking back. He had done exactly what an alpha should do when faced with an unacceptable bond. He had rejected it. A leader could not allow weakness beside him. The Luna of Shadowfang needed to be strong, commanding, someone capable of standing beside him in battle, someone the warriors would respect without hesitation. Arya Vale had never been that wolf. She was quiet, soft-spoken, a healer, a woman who spent most of her life grinding herbs and tending to wounds. No matter what the moon goddess might have revealed, Kale could not imagine placing the future of the pack in hands that fragile. Rejecting the bond had been the logical decision. Necessary. Final. At least, it should have been. Yet as Kale stood in the darkness now, something strange continued to pulse beneath his ribs. A faint pressure. A quiet tug that refused to disappear. His wolf stirred again inside his mind. Restless. Agitated. Kale clenched his fists. This should not be happening. When a mate bond was rejected, it ended. The connection vanished completely, leaving behind only the scar carried by the rejected wolf. The one who spoke the rejection usually felt a brief sting of pain as well, but it faded quickly. The bond was meant to be permanent only if both wolves accepted it. That was the law of their kind. That was how it had always worked. And yet, the faint sensation inside Kale's chest remained. Worse than that, it was growing stronger. His breathing slowed as he tried to concentrate on the feeling. The tug came again. Soft, persistent, almost like a thread pulling gently from somewhere far away. Kale's eyes narrowed. His wolf pushed forward suddenly, pressing against the walls of his mind with unexpected urgency. Find her. The instinct arrived without words. But Kale immediately pushed it back. No. He had already made his decision. The bond was over. Finished. Destroyed the moment he spoke the rejection before the pack. And yet his wolf remained unsettled. Because somewhere deep inside his instincts, something was not aligning with what his mind insisted was true. Kale turned away from the forest and began walking slowly across the empty training ground. The packed dirt beneath his boots carried the scent of recent sparring matches where warriors had trained earlier in the day. The familiar environment should have calmed him. Instead, the strange pressure inside his chest grew heavier. He stopped suddenly. The sensation pulsed again. Not painful, but undeniable. It felt almost like a heartbeat, not his own. Another. His brow furrowed. Impossible. The mate bond should have vanished. Yet the connection lingered like a faint echo refusing to fade. Cale shook his head sharply and forced himself to keep walking. Eventually, he returned to the Alpha's den, a large stone structure carved partially into the hillside at the edge of the village. The entrance opened into a wide chamber, illuminated by several dim lanterns hanging from iron hooks along the walls. The room was quiet, empty. Lydia had not come to visit tonight. Perhaps she had assumed he needed time alone after the ceremony. Or perhaps she simply wanted to let the pack continue whispering about what had happened. Cale removed his outer cloak and dropped it across the wooden chair near the stone table. Then he sat down heavily. The silence pressed around him. He leaned forward, resting his elbows against his knees. For several long minutes, he simply sat there, staring at the stone floor while the strange sensation inside his chest continued to pulse. Why had the bond not disappeared? The questions circled his thoughts endlessly. Had something gone wrong during the rejection? Had Arya done something to the bond before the ceremony? The thought irritated him immediately. No. She was a healer, not some mystical manipulator capable of altering sacred bonds. Yet the strange events in the clearing earlier that night had been difficult to ignore. The trembling ground, the sudden wind, the way the moonlight had brightened around her body. Cale's eyes darkened slightly. And those eyes. That brief flash of silver. He exhaled slowly. Perhaps it had simply been exhaustion, or the result of the bond snapping so violently. There were logical explanations for strange things. There had to be. Eventually, exhaustion began creeping into his limbs. Cale leaned back in the chair, closing his eyes for just a moment. Sleep arrived faster than he expected. But the moment his mind slipped into unconsciousness, the dream began. He stood in the clearing again. The same sacred stone platform beneath the full moon. The same forest surrounding the pack grounds. But the air felt different. Quieter. More reverent. The pack stood gathered in a wide circle around the platform, their heads lowered respectfully. Cale looked down at his own hands. He was wearing the ceremonial alpha cloak. But something else felt different. He turned slowly. And then he saw her. Arya stood beside him. Not kneeling. Standing. Her posture was straight, confident, powerful in a way he had never seen before. The pack was bowing to her. Every warrior. Every elder. Every wolf in the clearing. Arya's hair moved softly in the moonlight. And resting upon her head was a crown. Not made of gold. Not decorated with jewels. It was formed from pure silver light. A crescent-shaped crown that seemed to glow beneath the moon. Her eyes lifted to meet his. They were not the soft, brown eyes he remembered. They shone with the same silver light he had glimpsed earlier that night. The wind moved through the clearing, and every wolf bowed lower, as though acknowledging something sacred, something far greater than the Alpha himself. Cale felt his breath catch, because deep inside his instincts, his wolf recognized her, not as an Omega, not as a healer, but as something else entirely. Something ancient, something powerful. Then Arya spoke. Her voice echoed across the clearing. Soft, yet commanding. And the moment she spoke, Cale woke violently. His eyes snapped open in the darkness of the den. His heart pounded against his ribs. For several seconds, he remained perfectly still. The dream lingered in his mind, like a shadow that refused to fade. And deep inside his chest, the strange bond pulsed again. Stronger than before,